News reaches Rome before understanding does. Reports arrive in fragments, carried across distance by men who describe outcomes more easily than they explain them. Tribes are named that few recognize, places mentioned that most cannot locate, and victories announced without the detail required to fully grasp them. Yet, with each account, a pattern begins to form. Julius Caesar is winning. What that means in practice remains unclear to those listening in Rome, but clarity is not required for perception to take hold. In fact, distance seems to strengthen it. Each report builds on the last, and repetition begins to replace verification. Before long, success is no longer questioned, but rather expected. Welcome to the Mammoth in the Room podcast, where we share real-life stories about leadership and their underlying human behavior rooted in science and research. We unpack and interpret the evolutionary forces behind it to help you to better lead your people for outstanding business results. Welcome back to the Mammoth in the Room, where we explore leadership lessons that stand the test of time, using history and neuroscience to explain the human behavior behind pivotal decisions. Because those same patterns still shape how leaders and teams succeed or fail in organizations today. I'm Nicholas Bocconi, CEO of Mammoth Leadership Sciences. In the last episode, we saw how Julius Caesar secured his position through alliance, aligning himself with Pompey and Crassus to form a coalition that allowed him to move beyond survival, no longer having to navigate the system alone. Today, he leaves that system behind. When Julius Caesar takes command in Gaul, it is presented as an assignment, a provincial governorship, a responsibility at the edge of Romans' influence. But in practice, it offers something far more consequential: distance. Far from Rome, oversight weakens. Decisions can be made without immediate scrutiny, and outcomes can be shaped before they are debated. What happens in Gaul does not unfold under constant observation. It is reported back, interpreted, and only then absorbed into Romans' political reality. This creates an opportunity that does not exist within the city. In Rome, reputation must compete. In Gaul, it can be built. Campaigns begin not as a single decisive conflict, but as sequence of engagements across unfamiliar terrain. The tribes Caesar encounters are not unified, their alliances shifting, their responses shaped by local conditions rather than centralized command. This fragmentation allows Julius Caesar to move quickly, to isolate opponents, and to create momentum through repeated success. Each victory reinforces the next. For the soldiers under his command, this rhythm matters. Success shared under pressure creates a form of cohesion that is difficult to replicate elsewhere. They do not simply observe outcomes, they participate in them. Risk is distributed across the group, and survival depends on coordination. Over time, this produces something stronger than compliance. It produces identity. From an evolutionary perspective, this pattern is deeply familiar. Groups that face external threats together tend to form stronger internal bonds because cooperation under risk increases the likelihood of survival. Loyalty emerges not from instruction, but from shared experience. In Gaul, that mechanism is activated repeatedly. Soldiers begin to associate their success not with Rome, but with Julius Caesar himself. He is present in the decisions, visible in the outcomes, and consistently linked to survival and reward. The abstract authority of the Senate fades in relevance compared to the immediate authority of the commander who leads them through uncertainty. And loyalty shifts accordingly. At the same time, something else is happening at a distance. Back in Rome, these campaigns are not experienced directly. They are received as reports, summarized and retold, stripped of complexity and delivered as results, What is lost in detail is replaced by amplification. Each success appears cleaner, more decisive, more controlled than it likely felt on the ground. Distance does not distort reputation randomly, rather it tends to simplify it. And simplification, repeated often enough, becomes belief. Caesar's victories begin to accumulate into something that feels consistent, even inevitable. What may have been uncertain in execution becomes certain in perception. The distinction between outcome and capability begins to narrow. Success is no longer seen as situational. Rather, it is interpreted as personal to Julius Caesar. This shift matters because it changes how power is understood. Authority no longer depends solely on position or formal approval. It begins to detach itself to demonstrate its effectiveness, especially when that effectiveness appears stable across different situations. In organizational terms, this is where credibility becomes portable. What Julius Caesar achieves in Gaul does not stay in Gaul. It travels back to Rome, not as a detailed account, but as a signal that he can deliver results under pressure, that he can operate independently, and that he can sustain success over time. Those signals reshape expectations. Political actors in Rome begin to adjust their calculations. Caesar is no longer just a participant with a coalition. He becomes a source of leverage within it. His position strengthens not because of negotiation alone, but because of what he can point to, which is repeated success. From a behavioral standpoint, humans are highly responsive to visible patterns of success because throughout evolutionary history, aligning with effective individuals increased access to resources and protection. This tendency remains active in modern systems where people gravitate toward those who appear capable of consistently producing outcomes. In Rome, that gravitation begins quietly, shifting support, attention, risk assessments. And yet, this growing power carries a structural tension. Because what Julius Caesar is building in Gaul does not fit neatly within the system that exists in Rome. His authority is expanding outside the traditional channels, grounded in personal loyalty and reinforced by distant success. The longer this continues, the harder it becomes to reintegrate that power into a framework designed to distribute it. The system still functions, but it is being outpaced. For now, this tension remains contained. The benefits of Julius Caesar's success are still widely recognized, and the implications have not yet fully materialized. But the trajectory is becoming clearer. Power earned outside the system begins to challenge power defined within it. And that dynamic rarely resolves without consequence. Next time, we follow Julius Caesar to the edge of decision, where pressure builds to a point where restraint becomes harder to maintain, and the cost of inaction begins to outweigh the risk of escalation. Next week, stay tuned. All right, what does this leave us with as modern leaders? If you want to take away only two things from this episode, it would be these. First, repeated success under pressure creates credibility that extends beyond the original context. Humans are wired to follow individuals who consistently deliver results because doing so historically improved survival outcomes. In modern organizations, this means that performance in one domain can quickly translate into influence in another, even without formal authority. In practice, think about it, for example, in these terms. If you have a certain career trajectory in mind where your next step is to become a department lead, but someone offers you a chief of staff role within your current or another department before your own intended next step, think twice in rejecting this opportunity. Simply because your overall organizational credibility and influence might just grow exponentially through that very chief of staff step. Been there, done that. Secondly, loyalty forms most strongly through shared experience under risk, not through structure alone. Teams that navigate uncertainty together tend to build deeper alignment because trust is reinforced through action rather than instruction. For leaders, this means that real commitment is earned in moments of pressure, not declared in moments of stability. And it also means that you are not the leader of the group just because you show up on the top of the org chart. That is the easy part. The question is not whether success builds influence. It is whether you understand how far that influence can travel. All right, this was it for today. If this episode resonated with you, whether as a leader, a student of history, or someone curious about why power unfolds the way it does, please subscribe, rate, and share it with someone in your network who would appreciate this kind of perspective. And lastly, if you're interested in more, you can order my book. It has the same title as this podcast, The Mammoth in the Room. It offers a practical roadmap for how great leaders and their teams embrace evolutionary truths for outstanding business results. And it does that in 3 sections: on people, on strategy, and on implementation. Until next time, lead wisely, think critically, and don't let ancient instincts quietly hijack your modern leadership. I'm Nicholas Bocconi, and this is The Mammoth in the Room. Thank you for listening. If you enjoy this content, don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you on the next episode of The Mammoth in the Room.